committed to the history, preservation, conservation, rehabilitation, and continuing public use of the Auchmar Manor House, its associated buildings and cultural landscape. And that's for you, Councillor D'Amico, Ward 8. Special thanks go to Fred Fuchs, the idea man behind the restoration of this theatre. I, along with John Kajask, the idea man for our event this evening, and a board member of the Friends of Auchmar, we met with Fred for 2 hours several months ago with a request to host our event at the Westdale. I sort of forced Fred to drive by Auchmar with me. Fred said he didn't have time, but he got out of the car and exclaimed, "Wow, you must save this estate. This is amazing." Thus, Fred agreed to host our event. But Fred insisted that a talk not just be about a few minor things. He said, "Diane, you've got to have someone talk about architecture and history of Auchmar. This had to be part of this event." Thanks to Dan Fernier, the Westdale Theatre's technical manager, you will learn in a few moments the extra help he is providing this evening. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors who have made this event possible. Judy Marsail's Real Estate, Anne Birmingham, I2B Global Inc., Bob Gill, City of Hamilton, Ward 8 Councillor John Paul Danko, Concession Street BIA Executive Director Christina Geisler, who's here tonight. Thanks to the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum for complimentary tickets to be drawn at the end of this event, and to John Soika, who has donated 2 postcard books also to be drawn at the end of this event. Thanks to Bob and Karen Wilkins, owner of La Caniche Ancaster, for donating 50 special cookies with the Friends of Auchmar logo, and to Will's Bakery for also making cookies for us that we'll hand out at the end that have FOA, Friends of Auchmar, on them. Thanks to the board of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society for giving permission to the Friends of Auchmar to show their film, The War Story, at this event. We have called our event Auchmar the War Years because we have expanded the scope of the activities described in the film. The Mountain Heritage Society film was first previewed at a members' meeting in 2001. In 1966, it was the idea of the founder, the late Reverend Melville T. Bailey, to write an illustrated history of the Hamilton Mountain as a Millennium Project. As a result of the history undertaken to write that book, Doug Embleton, 91, who's with us tonight, met with Mrs. Viva Volker and was given photographs and tins of film, but not knowing what they contained. We thank Doug Embleton, who spent time with me sharing stories about growing up in Auchmar and meeting with Mrs. Volker. It was her husband, Flight Lieutenant Philip Volker, who was the doctor in charge at the Auchmar RCAF Convalescent Hospital, who took the films. This evening you will hear from Doug Embleton and John Soika, involved with the filming of The War Story, and from Bill Carey Jr., whose father was a patient at the Auchmar Convalescent Hospital and is interviewed in the film. Joachim Brouwer, the current president of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society, will be introduced later in the program, and David Lindeman, a board member of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society, will be at the back following this event if you wish to purchase a copy of the film. Thanks, of course, and appreciation must be given to the A.V. Young family, who in 1943 loaned their home, the Auchmar Estate, to the RCAF. On October 9, 1943, the first 7 airmen and staff were transferred to the No. 2 Convalescent Home at Auchmar. The Young Division had 40 beds and was devoted to burn and plastic surgery cases. And I'm sorry that the burn expert is not with us tonight. We wanted her to tell us about the difference between burn treatment in the 40s and the burn treatment today. This unit, the No. 2 Convalescent Hospital, or home at Auchmar, operated in close liaison with the Christie Street Hospital, Toronto. Certainly the airmen required rest, but Dr. Volker was aware that patients needed to be challenged. The film you will see highlights some of the activities that were part of Dr. Volker's treatment program. Dr. Volker documented on film the life of the airman to educate others about the effectiveness of individual therapies. The men made time to create an in-house newsletter, the Auchmar Tonic. Doug Embleton has copies of all the editions printed. The April 29, 1944 issue describes how the men built and planned a victory garden, and it includes photos showing the airmen bowling, cycling, cross-country skiing, and horseback riding. Doug Embleton will tell you, as a teenager living on the Auchmar estate with his family, he was responsible for exercising the horses. To quote an article from the Saturday Night magazine, April 1945, as convalescing airmen enjoyed physical exertion in the fresh air and sunshine, along with mental diversions and customized therapy, one could conclude that the program was, and I quote, one of the good things which has come out of the war. As we near Remembrance Day, let all of us remember and never forget the sacrifices made by so many, for so many of us. I would now like to call on Robert McKee, Vice Chairman of the Friends of Auchmar, to welcome and introduce our Master of Ceremonies, Bob Cowan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming out tonight. This is a huge support for the Friends of Auchmar and Auchmar Estate. I'm going to be very close, very quick, because we have to get going with this. We have another show after this show. So it is my honor to call up the MC for tonight. You all know him. I know him as a friend and a colleague at CHTV. He is the morning man, and you know him as Bob Cowan. He's going to give you the way to do this. All right? So thank you very much. I call him my friend. He's your friend tonight.
Oh, thank you. I've never been applauded before like Diane. Bear with me too, I gotta get a picture. You guys look so good, I gotta get a picture for my social media. There you go. Okay, selfie too. I gotta get the Westdale Theater in too. This is my first time in the renovated Westdale. Isn't this amazing? And I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. When Robin invited me, Robin, a friend of Akbar, a friend of mine, we worked together at CHCH, and I was really looking forward to this opportunity to be in this beautiful theater and to check out this film too. I'm also here because I have a long-time association with my friend Al here with the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum. I've worked with Al over the years, and through that work, and by the way, I should plug the fact that we're going to be back in the museum for Remembrance Day on Monday with some guests and friends of Auchmar talking about the film, which will be screening, I believe, at the museum as well. There's a special presentation, but so we'll have more on that on Monday. But through our years working with the museum, I hear so many stories about all of the heroes, the air crew, and the amazing gallantry, in the face of death. This is an interesting aspect that I really wasn't familiar with, how those heroes were given life again, because, of course, through the war, every member of the armed services faces death or debilitating injury, but air crew, there's that special, particular threat of burning. Comes with the territory, comes with the job, being that close to a huge fuel tank. So that was a very common thing among air crew. And war is always advanced technology. And this is an interesting aspect because I learned through this that there was actually huge advancements in medical technology, specifically plastic surgery. And those advances were Canadian on both sides of the Atlantic, with Dr. Tilley outside of London. As soon as the air crew received their injuries, they received immediate treatment, and some of these plastic surgery advances, and those advances were taken further into Toronto, and then they convalesced at Auchmar. But those advances made in plastic surgery then by these two Canadians, it was Dr. Volker, actually was specialized in treating the burns, but of Dr. Tilley in England with plastic surgery. Through these advances, they were certainly giving new life again. And it's amazing that these advances were Canadian and are the foundation for plastic surgery today. So, you know, it's just part of this history that really needs to be told. And unfortunately, we don't have the burn expert here to talk about it, but that is just something that we will learn about in the film, just about how these advances were made. And Dr. Volker specifically, he changed the rule book on how to treat burn victims, and it all happened here at Auchmar. So it's going to be a fascinating glimpse in this film that's going to be seen on a big screen like this for the very first time tonight. So we're going to have Doug, as mentioned, talking of Doug grew up at Auchmar, so an interesting perspective, and many other voices tonight after the film, and some great giveaways as well. Now, we were supposed to have, talking about Auchmar, Shannon Kyles. I got a news update. I got a memo that Shannon, poor Shannon, she's on her back. She threw her back out. She's flat out, couldn't make it tonight, but certainly we send our best wishes. But we're in good shape because we have the technical director or manager of the beautiful Westdale Theatre with us, Dan Fournier, who is an absolute expert on Auchmar as well. Come on up, Dan. Let's give him a big hand.
All right, my name is Dan Fournier. I am not an architectural major. I do not build buildings. However, today I learned all about it. And I'm going to teach you all about the differences between classic design and Gothic technology. There will be a test at the end of this, so please listen. I want to thank everybody for coming. You know, we reopened back in February. This is an Art Deco style, so we're going to talk about a couple of different things. There's a couple of people here, though, I would like to acknowledge. Bob and Maggie Carr are here. These are fantastic supporters of the Westdale Theatre. Who's eating popcorn? Put your hand up. So because of Bob and Maggie Carr, they provided us the popcorn making machines. So thank you there. Where are you there? Put your hands up there. Bob and Maggie, where are you? So it's always nice to see them, and thank you for coming out. So tonight, Christmas came early for Dan. Whoops. As I got some new technology and I got new toys to play with. So this is the first time we're using this. I created a PowerPoint presentation on some of the architectural stuff we're going to talk about. And look at that, it worked like magic. Beautiful. So the Auchmar building was built in 1854 by Isaac Buchanan in the Gothic style. Gothic style uses local craftsmen and local elements of surrounding buildings to incorporate it into the building. One of the neat things that I found out about the construction of the building, Isaac Buchanan actually paid his employees to build the estate. A lot of the historical buildings in Hamilton were built, and the construction people were not paid. They were basically endeavored to do it on behest of the people that owned the properties. But Auchmar, when they built it, the people who built it were actually paid. The next slide. So in the Gothic style, this is an example of two buildings. We have the University of Windsor on the left, and we have the Galt Post Office. Both of these buildings were originally built in the Gothic style, but as time went on, and instead of doing full-on restorations that they've done at Akbar and that we've done here, they've kind of mishmashed the Gothic with the modern. So if you look, and I've been to the University of Windsor, so all they basically kept was the front wall of the facade, and there's nothing in the middle. They just have those support beams holding up the building. Oh, I'm sorry. Brian, can you just turn down the house lights a bit to make the screen a little brighter? Thank you. The Galt Post Office, they built on this glass structure that's in the front. So again, that kind of takes away a little bit from the original building. And if anybody's been to the Louvre in France, they built that big glass pyramid out front. That was somebody's genius idea to do that. So that is another example of where they meshed in the Gothic with the modern. The Strawberry Hill Estate in England, the property was bought as a cottage, and then it was transformed into a Gothic revival manor. Horace Walpole, who was an author, is said to have been the inventor of the 19th century Gothic revival. So when he added on and started building onto this building, he brought all the old Gothic traditions back. So another example of the Gothic style is the bay windows. Like McMaster Hamilton Hall, medieval guild halls, you'll see that it's the three-sided bay window with the rounded tops on them. Very similar to the bay window at Auchmar. A little bit smaller, but three-sided. Dndar Castle. Dndar Castle was built in 1830 by Sir Allan MacNab. Dndar Castle is an example of a more classical accents, like the Regency smooth features on the building. If you've ever been to Dndar Castle, it's very finished. It's very smooth, very polished. That's classic design, whereas the Gothic design has more of a rough finish to it. So there's an example. If you see the bay window at Dndar, it's rounded. It's not a three-sided, and then it also has balusters up at the top. And then we have a picture of the same bay window from Auchmar. These are Mohawk students that are standing inside of it. The one thing that I learned about this is in the Gothic style, it was big windows to let in a lot of natural light, whereas the classic design, the windows were much, much smaller and the interiors were much darker because before electricity, they would use natural light. And with the big windows, they were able to bring in more light into the space. This is another picture of the inside of the Strawberry Hill in Cambridge, England. It is, if you can see, the bright reds, the gold trim, and the white kind of really makes it pop and stand out. But then when you look at what the Auchmar hallways look like, you can see it's a little bit more darker, but it's very rich looking, a lot of very big wood trims and columns. And then the lancet arches are also very popular. So here's an example of a column. This actually is from a museum in Helsinki, Finland. And the reason why we use this picture was if you look at the intricacy of the floral that's on the top of the pillar, that is the classical design, which would basically what they did was they copied it wherever they went. Didn't matter where the building was. When they used the classical style, they always used that type of floral. That type of floral can only be found in Italy. But what they do in the Gothic design is they use plants or flowers that are native to the area. So you'll see this is a column from Auchmar. The next slide is St. Paul Cathedral on James Street. You can see that it's kind of roses and types of flowers that you would find around Hamilton. This is another picture of the Strawberry Hill detailing the classical design. These types of design factored in security. So back in the day, a lot of the older castles and buildings had to be kind of fortified from attack. So you'll see that they have these cutouts in a lot of the buildings. And then also here's another picture from Strawberry Hill. So these cutouts, War of 1812, you duck in that little spot there with your musket, take a shot, hide behind the big pillar, reload, do that. That was how those buildings were designed because they weren't in secure locations. A lot of these buildings were in the middle of the country and they were susceptible to attack. So security designs, they didn't have alarm systems or anything like that. This is what they kind of had to use and factor in. And this is another picture of the Strawberry Hill Library. You'll see the very smooth finishes. I would love that library in my rec room. Don't think it's going to happen though. And here's some plaster detailing from Auchmar. So the Gothic design, this is a window on the left from Auchmar and a door. You'll see that the window has a pointed finish to it rather than a rounded edge. And the door has the same thing. And what they would do is they had this piece of molding that was put on the top. That was kind of designed to keep the rain out. They didn't have storm doors back then. So they put those pieces of trim. And a lot of the design finishes were in points instead of rounded edges. An example of Dndar Castle's finish. You can see how smooth it is and how the windows are rounded rather than pointed. And this is another building on the Auchmar property. Now this one was, what makes this unique is that it was, it incorporates a little bit of both classical and Gothic. They wanted to make that a subtle change so it wouldn't take away from the actual glory of the main Auchmar estate building. This is a picture of Downton Abbey, which we will be showing here in a couple of weeks. Most estates back in the day were used as convalescent hospitals. So this obviously is a World War I era photo, but a lot of the big abbeys or castles would be repurposed as field hospitals or transfer stations during the wars. Now the Regency Estate, this is Shannon's actual house. She actually redid this house back to its original form. This house is actually in let me just see, Prince Edward County. And this house was actually used as a hospital during the War of 1812. So lots of history in that property as well. Now, these are drawings of the Auchmar estate. These drawings were done by Mohawk College students that Shannon enlisted and was teaching. And they did these drawings to kind of show how elegant and dynamic the building was. That is kind of the end of that presentation, so you're ready for the test? Because I worked on this all day. It was very interesting. I'm very happy to have filled in. It's always nice to get thrown into these types of things because you get to learn some stuff that you never really knew. I have done house renovations before, but I never really got into Gothic versus Classic. So this was a very interesting thing for me to do today. So I thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I was able to translate some of this information that was a little bit of a learning piece for you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. I'll be around at the end of the night if you have any questions. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Dan. And did you mention the Murdoch Mysteries? You mentioned Downton Abbey. Did you mention Murdoch Mysteries?
Murdoch Mysteries, no, that's what we have to do.
Yeah, okay, because Auchmar's been used.
Yes.
Yeah, it's shown up. You guys watch Murdoch Mysteries? Yeah. Well, Auchmar is starting that, and actually they should move Downton Abbey to Auchmar. Shoot it here. I got to clarify, by the way, talking to Robin, the Monday night screening is here for Reunion of Giants, which is the Canadian Warplane Heritage film, which documented just that, the reunion of giants, the Lancaster that's based here in Hamilton, reuniting with the only other flying Lancaster in the world in England, and that historic event in 2014 documented in this film. That will screen here 7 o'clock Monday night. Okay, Dan will know, we'll double check that, but great to see it here on the big screen. And actually, Elle is here with an excerpt from the movie that we're going to share tonight. Did you get my scene in it, Elle? Oh, I was cut. I had 3 frames in that documentary, but it was an amazing experience, and we're going to share some of that with you tonight. Right now, I want to share a story. So this Auchmar, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Can you imagine growing up there? This man did, Doug Embleton. Please give him a warm, warm welcome as we get Doug up on stage here. Doug was the official troublemaker of Auchmar, as you will learn. Come on up, Doug. We got a chair for Doug. Here we go. Let's get you comfy. Uh-oh, we got wheels on this. Hang on. Okay.
No, I'll stand here. I think.
Oh, okay.
I gotta have some place to put all this large.
All right, I'll park myself.
That's it. All right, yeah.
I'll hold it. Okay, we're good. I got Doug in
There's
the
something
point.
matter here.
All right.
Oh, anyway.
Don't break it. Like you broke the bed at Auchmar. Can you tell that story?
Oh, you want me to tell that one
Yes.
right now?
Right now.
Is that for later?
Well, we're going to do it now, aren't we? Yeah.
Okay, I'll start out with that then.
Yeah.
Okay. On Sunday afternoons, my brother, who at that time was maybe 17, and his girlfriend, a mountain girl, they would come for dinner at the gatehouse, and then maybe the next week they'd go up to the farm, to the Gillen farm. Maybe you've heard of that, Harvey Gillen and all that. Maybe not. Okay, but anyway, so Phyllis, that's the girl. She was always kidding around with me because I was 12 years old and she was 17 or something like that. And so what she would do is she'd be giving me a poke or something and laughing and goofing, and we got along fine. It was very nice. But at any rate, oh geez, I gotta remember talking to this thing.
Hey, just talk to these guys.
Yeah, okay. All right, but so anyway, she was in that kind of a mood that day. And so she was joking with me and kidding with me, and suddenly she gave me a poke or something, I forget now. But at any rate, what happened was, after a while, I got a little tired of that, and I poked her back. And with that, I had to run away because I know she would chase me, and there would be some kind of a thing going on. We weren't cross at one another. We were very happy together. But at any rate, we went upstairs, or I ran upstairs, and she was right behind me. She could really go. And when we got to the top, that's where we slept on it was just a stand, well, it wasn't a room, but it was a landing. And right in front of that was the door to my parents' bedroom. So I ran in there, and with knowing Phyllis was after me, I jumped on the bed, and I was going to wrap it in a blanket or something, but that's fine. But she was quicker to get up that stair than I realized, and so she came barreling up there like a train and jumped on the bed, and the whole bed collapsed onto the floor with a tremendous boom. So anyway, my dad happened to be on the same floor in another room, and he wanted to go to get a Sunday afternoon sleep. He had to go back and feed the horses. He was looking after the horses at Auchmar, and so what he did, he was coming upstairs, and he hears this big boom, runs in. My brother was there. He had a little desk with one light, and he was doing his homework. He did well in school, and that's why he did well, because he did a lot of studying. Not me so much, but anyway, what happened then was my dad got up there, and he hears this big boom, and he's tired. He's been working and all that kind of stuff. So he thought he would get a nice rest, and so he barges into the room, and who got blamed? Who got blamed? I got blamed. And so he was coming towards me. I don't know what was going to happen. He had been a pro boxer in his day, and I didn't want any of that. Anyway, he would never hit me like that. But I was kind of afraid of him anyway. I was only, at that time, I would have been maybe 11 or 12, you know. And so anyway, I was coming, and when she hit that and went down, and my brother was there, thank God, because what he did, he came over, and as soon as my dad went, he was going to give me Akbar or something. They were thinking that I was to blame for all this, because probably from my own history. But what happened was my brother, first time in his life, he stepped in between my dad and myself, and he saved me, because he had a very good rapport with my dad. He got along with him, and he enjoyed himself with that. And anyway, so Dad stopped down, and he was calmed down, and Dad says, take it easy, take it easy. I can fix this in 5 minutes. So I sort of got and I'm trying to sneak out because I didn't want this to escalate, if you know what I mean. And anyway, Harry got this all fixed. His name was Harry, and my dad's name was Harry. And so the two of them, they were good about that. And but really, and it was Harry. He said, "I'll fix it," and he had to. And so what he did, he ripped off the mattress, and he got down and got all the slats that had fallen off of the bed. In the old time, they used to have slats on the bed, and so that was quite an exciting afternoon, I gotta tell you. So that's that.
Well, I'm glad peace came, Doug. That's Auchmar, the war years, and Doug started it by breaking the bed. But we're going to get more stories because it's fascinating. We're going to watch the film, and then we're going to watch it, and we're going to have a panel because we want to hear about your experiences and meeting the doctors and what your perspective was growing up there, along with people who worked in the film as well. And of course, we have our, as mentioned, the excerpt of Reunion of Giants and a giveaway as well. So lots to come. But are we ready? Dan, are we good to go for the film? All right, let's check this out. Okay, Doug. Yeah, don't wander too far, Doug. Akbar, the war years. A few of the names we saw in the credits roll by are actually with us tonight. You met Doug. Doug, what are you doing sitting there? We need you up here. Doug Hamilton, let's welcome him back to the stage. In the film, we have Junior with us tonight. Where's Bill Terry Jr.? Come on up, Bill. And saw him in the credits for editing and sound and helping to make this possible. Come on up, guys. We got to chat about this. By the way, Doug is 91. Let's give him a big hand for that. I still don't believe it. I want to see some ID. Now, Doug, as soon as you get comfy, I want to ask you about how you actually acquired all this film footage.
All right, just a second here. I get my notes out here. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
That eventually wound up in the lap of John to put it all together.
Do it by name. Tell us when you told me. Where did you meet Mrs. Volker?
Mrs. Volker, well, the first time was when we were doing our book, you know, the memories. And I received some pictures at that time, recorded all that, so that everything,
And what did she give you time for that?
nothing at that time. There's some people think differently here, but I'm going to give you the real stuff here. Okay, maybe I should I'd like to read this because I don't want to get the timing out, you know? Not correct. And anyway, we don't have a heck of a lot of light up here, do we?
Hang on, we got this.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Okay, here we are. I want to just give it to you here straight. I had a call from Pat Saunders, a member of Friends of Auchmar. She was asking me to explain to you folk how I came to find 3 cans of film and audiovisual projector. I replied that I would try to do that. She said that I would be given details later. Diane Dent gave me a draft program for a Hamilton-wide premiere of Auchmar, The War Years, and saying that I had 5 minutes assigned to what I decided to say. Anyway, I don't know how accurate I'm going to be on that. But anyway, I decided to phone the Volker residence in Waterloo. I had received her name and address when I got the pictures in the first time when we were doing the book. Okay, but I couldn't remember where they were in my files. But after a short while, I got them. So I decided to phone the Volker residence in Waterloo, home of Dr. and Mrs. Volker. Mrs. Volker answered the phone, and I identified myself that I was a member of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society. I asked if I could speak to the doctor. She informed me that he had died 5 years ago, but perhaps she could help me.
We're at 3%, Doug.
I told her that I was looking for information about the wartime hospital at Auchmar that we could use for historical purposes. She said she had pictures, an audiovisual projector, and 3 cans of film which show hospital activity at Akbar during the years of 1943 to 1945. You've heard about this, a lot of this already. I said that I was sure the committee would be delighted to see these items. Mrs. Volker said both the film and the projector needed upgrades. The film and the projector needed upgrades. She and I agreed that all the items would have to be seen by our committee, by a professional in dealing with video productions and such things. Several members had known of a man, and I know he's here tonight, a video production business by the name of John Soika.
Okay, can we bring John in?
Yeah, well, if you want, yeah. I know, that's all. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, okay. All right. He's standing at that dais there, I think. But anyway, thanks very much for the help there. Yeah. So here's his full occupation here: promotional sales and broadcast television. Mrs. Volker said all the items were stored in the basement of her home and that she needed help to get them out. She said she would get her son to help her with this and that she would call me when this was accomplished. Mrs. Volker invited me and my wife to visit her in Waterloo. When everything was done, in order to have lunch and tour her home. Auchmar was built in 1853, but her house, although smaller than Auchmar, was much older. I'm not sure just how much older. I didn't get around to asking that. But anyway, as luck would have it, my son Andy was teaching a course in Kitchener. Only a hop, skip, and a jump. I hope you recognize that little 3 or 4 words. I never hear that any longer. Do you?
We're going to hear it soon. There's another movie coming.
Okay, a hop, skip, and a jump. I'm just about done. Don't push. Don't push. There'll be big trouble here. Yeah, okay.
The troublemaker.
As luck would have it.
As luck would have it, my son Andy was teaching a course at Kitchener, only a hop, skip, and a jump from Waterloo. So on one day after class, he picked up the equipment and brought them home to Hamilton. This pickup was organized by Andy, my son, and Mrs. Volker. I, of course, contacted Stuart Leslie, who was the leader of our committee. The foregoing led to a motion to proceed with action to try to make use of what we had now had. This led to a possible video, and a good number of people became involved. I see that my time is up, so
No.
You're making me nervous up there. Yeah, I was up, so any questions you may ask and fielded by the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. John, when you received this material, like, how much was there? How overwhelming was it to put together what we saw tonight?
Big projector.
Pull the wire around behind it.
So Stuart Leslie approached me. I had a business on Upper James Street called AdCan Video Productions. And Stuart approached me and said he had the film, but it had already been converted by another company from the original film to SVHS video. There wasn't anything digital at that time. And we sat down and looked at it. He said, "What do we do with it?" And I said, "Well, we need to add photographs, we need a voiceover, we need music, we need all kinds of things." And from that point on, Stuart and I had a love-hate relationship. A little more hate than love, but we got through it. He arranged for the people to be interviewed, including your dad. He ignored everything I said and asked for. We fought quite long over the music, and I had to explain to him numerous times about copyright, infringement, lawsuits, etc. He didn't seem to think that was important for a heritage society. I asked how much money they had. We took it from there, worked on it, and got everything together that you saw tonight. The question I asked consistently to Stuart, and we get along fine, was, is there anybody else? Who else could be interviewed? We had the three main people, and the most important one. And he said, no, absolutely nobody else at all. And I said, is there anything else we can put in the video other than what you've seen from the books that Doug supplied me, etc., and photographs? And he said, nope, that's it. And when everything was finished and in the can, copies made, he said, we're going to have a grand presentation at the Olivet Church for the Heritage Society. And amongst the people we're inviting are the nurses who used to work there. He was this close to death. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me about them? I asked. He says, oh, no, they live far too far away. And I said, where? He says, London. I lived in England for 10 years. I'll happily go back. No problem. And he says, no, London, Ontario. I says, my brother lives there. I drive down for coffee and back. He says, oh, no, it's too far to go. And then he later said, we could have done everything, instead of in your father's apartment, in Auchmar. He had the keys. Didn't tell me until later.
Well, you did a great job putting it all together. Thank you, John. Now, I love your dad's story about that 40-pound cast. Well, we saw.
I'll tell you that Bill, I wasn't sure that he was going to come tonight, so we're thrilled because he said, and he will tell you, how he searched and searched for more of this information. So Bill, tell us more about what he did.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of our family pictures went AWOL once my father passed away. We haven't been able to find them, so it's nice to see him again and see him up on the screen there. And my dad spent a lot of his life on the stage and musical productions and etc. And it's nice he finally made it on the silver screen. So it's good for him. But he always spoke very fondly about Akbar and Dr. Volker. It really made a big impression on him. He wasn't really one to share stories from the past too much. He kind of had his little things that he would go to, but back in the late 90s, when I first started working for a plumbing company, I happened to work at this place called Auchmar, and he happened to overhear this, and all of a sudden the stories just came pouring out of him. And he said, he was telling me, he said, where were you? And my room was here, and did you go here, and did you go there? And unfortunately at that point the building was in quite bad repair. I think there was nuns using it at that point. And It was quite sad shape, but the heating system had packed it in and they didn't have the money to fix it, so he was quite sad about that. But then he told me a while later, he says, I'm going to be in this video for Auchmar, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and I thought, I'll think much about it. Then we saw the video later, and I just was so proud to see him up there and just talking about all those years, and he seemed so animated, and his memory is about 1,000 times better than mine is, so it was quite interesting to see everything recalled. So.
Thank you, Bill. Big hand for these guys sharing the stories. Bill, John, Doug, thank you. Al, can I get from the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum? Big hand for Al, who's comes bearing gifts. I think we have a giveaway coming up, but Al's going to talk about the film that you're going to see an excerpt of. Reunion of Giants. Al.
Thanks, Bob. So if maybe some of you aren't aware of this, back 5 years ago in 2014, the Canadian Warplane Heritage flew their Avro Lancaster across the pond in an 18-hour flight. We broke it down into a few parts, over to England, and then we continued to fly for 2 months, where we flew with the other flying Lancaster and toured the UK. And then we put a film together called Reunion of Giants, which we're playing here on November 11th. Now, what people may not realize was Bob was actually on that trip a bit, weren't you, Bob?
Yes, it was amazing.
So we thought it would be a good idea to have some media coverage, local media coverage, on the aircraft when it arrived in Coningsby, England. And I'm pretty sure I told Bob, dress warm, but I may have mentioned it. Okay, I didn't say that. So Bob met us in, you didn't do the whole trip, you met us in Iceland.
Right.
And he may not have been prepared for the weather. So it was over the Atlantic, so it's fairly cold. As you fly higher, it gets colder. So we flew about 8,000 feet. And the Lancaster has very thin metal. There's no insulation in it. So it was very cold. You could see your breath at the back of the airplane. Yeah, and you didn't even wear socks, did you? No. So on another leg of the trip, one of the things that the pilots do when they're flying level is they trim the aircraft out so that they can, pretty much let their hands off the controls, and it'll hopefully fly fairly level. And they trimmed it out, and all of a sudden the aircraft would go nose up. So they'd retrim it back. All of a sudden the aircraft would go nose down. And they're like, oh, the trim control's broken or something. So a little later on, they found out all the crew members who were in the back freezing were running back and forth at the back end of the airplane. I thought one of them might have been you, Bob.
Sorry.
So another part of this trip was, it was a very difficult trip for us to put together. First of all, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not government funded. So other than all the logistical issues of flying a 70-year-old bomber across the ocean and then continuing that on for 2 more months, was the financial part. How are we going to pay for a trip? Because something like that, the fuel alone was $400,000 on that trip. So we thought, how are we going to do this? So there's a few extra passenger seats on this, so we thought, why don't we see if we can find some person, sucker, to pay to see if they want to buy a flight on a very rare opportunity. So we put it on eBay, and didn't do too much for a while. Then near the end, someone from England purchased it for $80,000. So we thought, oh my, that is fantastic. So about 5 minutes after the eBay thing ended, and we were still celebrating, the phone rings. Some guy said, I bid $100,000 on this trip, but eBay didn't accept my bid. Because I guess once you go over $75,000 on eBay, they actually ask you to put different or additional financial records in. I've never experienced this because I've never bid that high. Who knew? So we thought, what are we going to do? We don't want to turn away $100,000. All the seats are spoken for, going to England. But we don't necessarily need the film crew on the airplane coming back, because it's pretty much the same thing, except going the other way. So we thought, we'll take one of the film crew guys off the airplane, and we'll give this guy the opportunity to come back for $100,000. So he agreed to that. We thought, wow, 180 grand just like that. So 5 minutes later, another person calls, same story, so we put him on the trip coming back. So $280,000. So that was the start of us fundraising for this trip, and it just went on from there, and we eventually did pay for the trip. So on November 11th, on Monday, we have 2 screenings of the Reunion of Giants, the film we put together from the trip. Both showings are sold out, and I believe after we'll see a short trailer of this right now, and then afterwards I believe we're going to give away some passes for that.
An airplane sitting in a cold, dark hangar only for so long.
It's one thing seeing an aircraft in a museum, but when you see an aircraft in flight, it brings it to life.
You crank up those engines one time and it becomes alive. It's something you just don't forget.
A Lancaster is an iconic aircraft. 7,377 built, 2 left flying in the world.
This is the one and only opportunity you will have to see the 2 in the air together.
It has been distilled to a simple phrase: the Canadians are coming.
These are all aircraft, and you're requiring a lot of them to bring them all that way.
This is just the start. This is still just getting there. That was awesome. We're jumping islands in a 7-year-old bomber. We don't think that this will ever happen again. So it's history in the making. Here we are. We did it. We actually did this. We've made it. That's the first obligation. We're here.
You're always aware of what that airplane stands for.
The Lancaster bomber is a great part of the English history, of course.
We're whistling around in the same kind of airplane, but we didn't have those pressures. We didn't have those outcomes.
It's nearly 70 years since I've been around. That has got something in there. Veterans were disappearing. The memories were disappearing.
There's fewer and fewer of them every day. This is our chance to say thank you.
If we didn't do this now, it might be too late for a lot of them.
It's for them that they stand, it's for them that they fly. It's in honour of them. They are a living memorial to all that they did.
She's a memorial and she's there to remind people, and the best place to do that is where she can be heard and seen.
We need to start getting this airplane ready.
We're here to do events. We're not here to just fly around in an airplane for fun.
She's got a lot of work to do.
This is the first time that a civilian unit has displayed with the Royal Air Force.
Very nice.
This is the day we've been looking forward to. Here we go.
We will certainly make sure we're flying our airplane as well as they do.
It's the only other one in the sky, so just follow it.
The guys that are flying these aircraft have never done this before in these airplanes.
We've got to get it right the first time.
If we didn't make this first step, the tour wouldn't have been possible.
Welcome, guys. This is going to be something to behold.
The sky is our concert stage, and we love to make nice music.
We didn't really need it, but it's re-cemented the friendship between Canada and England.
We knew we weren't just visitors, we were family.
It's just a passion. It's a true passion.
And it's always about the 2 Lancasters.
It was on a scale that will never be seen again.
Don't get much better than this.
More of the same in the town where the Air Force Base was. The reception and the thank you to Canada was unbelievable. Oh, do I need to say that again? All right, I'm getting the dog treatment, trying to speed me along. Okay, so we've got a giveaway for the movie.
Well, actually, what we do, we have 4 passes that Al is going to pick some numbers.
Okay.
So what we need to do, because we're running about 10 minutes late, is to, if you've won the draw, you will meet at the back and you'll speak with Al. There are 4 passes to the Warplane Museum, 2 for the Return of Giants. And I think we have our counselor who's going to draw them. And then John Boyka, if you meet him at the back, he has 2 books for of the postcards that he will, if you give him your address, he's going to bring them. So first, you just picked one, go ahead.
All right. Okay, I need my phone again. I got to see this thing. Yeah. All right, last 4 digits. 6793. And that's for the museum passes. 6793.
Raise your hand. Is that anybody here? Yes? No?
Should we draw again?
Draw again.
Okay, 6779.
No?
Okay. Yeah. John Paul Danko, by the way. Thank you, Councillor Danko, for showing up and helping out here. 6795. 6795.
Shake it up.
Where do we get these tickets? Okay, how about 6861? Yes? Bingo! Congratulations! So that was passes for the museum. We'll deliver. Okay, now for the film Return of the Giants, Reunion of the Giants. 6860. Oh, right there! Congratulations! You've got passes here for Reunion of Giants here for the Monday screening. And this is for...
The John Soiko's
oh yeah, it's Made in Hamilton book?
Right.
Right. Okay, the winning number for John's book is 6817. 6817. Way in the back, congratulations!
Thank you very much. Now what we're going to do is something that's very special, is our musicians who are here waiting for us, Mark McNeil and Les Smith. But first, we're going to hear from our counselor as they get ready.
Thank you. So that's a bit of a tepid applause. That's kind of what I'm used to, not like Diane. She gets a great applause. Bob gets a great applause. I get like, hey, it's the counselor. Thank you for having me here. My name is John Paul Danko. If you don't know me, I am the Ward 8 counselor, which is where Auchmar is. It's located in my ward that I'm fortunate enough to represent. And this is just such a fantastic evening. It's so great to see so many people out who are interested in heritage in Hamilton, and the description of Akbar as the mountain's jewel, the mountain's Dndar, it's such a tremendous asset for us, and it reminds us of all the amazing heritage that we have on the Hamilton Mountain. So just really quick, because I know Diane's probably getting the hook out here. One of the interesting things in the video there, I believe that was 2001, right, Robin, when that was done? Where just at the end there, when they announced that the city had purchased the property and they're looking forward to the revitalization and renewing of Auchmar. So, 18 years ago. Just real quick, we have had some really good progress on the Auchmar property just this year. It was one of the first things I was involved in, actually, after being elected, I believe it was January of last year, where the city council, we've officially closed the door to outside bids on Auchmar, outside ideas for what was going to happen there, and we've decided that, you know what? This is too important to wait. We're tired of trying to figure out somebody else to swoop in and take this over. We're going to take it in-house, and we are going to find the capital funds available, and we're going to redo this property and bring it back to its former glory. Thank you, and with that, we have our musical guests. Thank you.
Is the guitar coming through? Excellent, excellent. Of course, Auchmar was built by Isaac Buchanan, and Isaac Buchanan was known for also starting the 13th Battalion, which became the RHLI. And of course, they're known as the Rileys. And I wrote a song about 7 years ago for the 150th anniversary of the RHLI. It's called Private Riley. My name is Private Riley. I come from Hamilton. Need some extra shillings, so I joined the battalion. They shipped me on a cattle battered musket gun. We made a stand at Ridgeway against the bloody Fenians. I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, with my pack and uniform. When they called, I was ready, always ready, peaceful. Name is Private Riley, Flanders and the Somme. I crawled through clouds of chlorine gas along the sun. Waited cold and shivered for the rising of the sun. We hit the ridge at Vimy, had the Germans on the run. I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, with my pack and uniform. When they called, I was ready, always ready, peace and war. I'm a soldier, with my pack and uniform. When they called, I was ready, always ready in peace and war. My name is Private Riley, the beaches of Dieppe, waded through the water with our guns above our heads. Jerry sat in the touchdown, we bravely charged forward as the waters all turned red. I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, with my pack and uniform. When they called, I was ready, always ready, in peace and war. My name is Private Riley, deployed in Kandahar. I watch for suicide bombers, forever I'm on guard. Sometimes I do wonder, have I really come that far? From a scared kid to the muskets rain in a cattle car. I'm a soldier, I'm a soldier, with my pack and uniform. When they called, I was ready, always ready, peace and war. Always ready, peace and war. Always ready, peace and war.
back up.
Turn it on, Bob.
So, almost at the end of the program.
Bob, turn it on.
My first day.
There are cookies when you leave. At the end. The best ones are for the people who leave at the end. All right, so what are we doing now? We are going to ask the Friends of the Board of Auchmar to please stand. Robin McGee, John Kajask, John Buchanan, Pat Saunders, Bob Gill, Richard Allen, and Terry Geisler. If you'd all say applause. Thank you. Now, if Joachim Brouwer, President of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society, will come and say a few words.
Thank you, Diane. So much of what you've seen tonight was the responsibility and the duty of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society. So I'm just going to read a little bit that I wrote here. The Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society is dedicated to recovering, recording, and preserving the history of the Hamilton Mountain, formerly Upper Barton Township, and before that to traditional homelands of the Shonhoniton neutral peoples. The Society meets at the Southgate Presbyterian Church at 120 Clarendon Avenue. 5 times a year. Admission is free and parking is available in the parking lot around the church. This coming, or rather on Thursday, November 21, we are pleased to present Bridget Whittle from McMaster Archive, from the McMaster Special Collections in the basement of Mills Library. And Bridget will be speaking on Hamilton at War, Tales from the Home Front. Sean Selway, who I'm sure many of you know, will be speaking at January's meeting about the Shadok Sanitarium. This will also be our annual general meeting where we will be electing our new slate of officers. All are welcome to attend, and we are always looking for new talent to come on board our executive. Now, you heard a lot about the origins and the genesis of the project, but I want to read one short paragraph in verbatim from our general minutes that Murray Aikman prepared. From the minutes of the film premiere. It was a very exciting evening when the true premiere of Auchmar, the War Story, took place on November 15, 2001 at the annual general meeting of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society with more than 200 members and friends in attendance. It was also very special because we were meeting for the first time at the Olivet United Church. Among the guests that evening was Mrs. Volker, who received one of the first copies of the video, end of quote. And finally, the preservation and continued use of Auchmar, being one of several pre-Confederation sites up on the hill, is part of the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society's mandate, and we were happy to be co-sponsors of the film tonight that you all saw.
Thank you, Joachim. So in closing, what is my privilege is to say thank you to all of who made this event possible. First to Fred Fook and Dan Fournier. Where's Dan? He did an excellent job. And to our sponsors, Judy Marsails, Ann Birmingham, Bob Gill, Christina Geisler, the Canadian Warplane Museum, John Soika, and Karen Wilkins and her husband. And who participate tonight? Bob Cowan. Thank you very much. And we mention again Dan Fournier, Douglas Embleton, John Soika, Bill Carey, Mark McNeil, and Les Smith. We thank you all for your support. If you want to come and see something else that Auchmar's doing, the Friends, it's our AGM, Wednesday, December the 4th from 5 to 7 at the Hamilton Club. Check out the Hamilton Mountain Heritage Society website and the Friends of Auchmar. Thank you for coming very much. We really welcome your support. We welcome your suggestions and ideas. And please, get a cookie when you leave. I had 150 made, so you'll have to get to the front of the line so you don't miss out. Thank you very much.